Oh, hey friends. How are you guys? How's life in the quarantine world on your end? As you can see, I need a haircut because of apathy. I've gone through like 3 quarantine beards. So here we are. I figured because it's still tomato season, and I'm still going to the farmer's market all the time, you probably have tomatoes. Plus, I've been seeing a million people make BLTs, which is like the easiest thing to make. But it's popular, so we're gonna do that. But we're gonna do it the most complicated way possible, because why not? I'm gonna use a couple farm fresh eggs. I just realized I don't have it. Yeah, that'd be risky. One sec. Talking whilst cooking is a skill that I need to learn. I need to separate the yolks because we're just gonna use those guys. I realized I didn't have a thing for the whites. You can make an omelet out of just whites and you can save them. It might appear wasteful and I'm just throwing them away, so don't judge me. Every once in a while if I'm making avocado toast, I'll save the whites and I'll just kind of scramble them and then mix them in. But in general, so we're gonna make a mayo or aioli, or I mean there's a, I'm gonna try to do like a hybrid of the Japanese mayo because it's delicious. They use a few other ingredients. Typically an aioli is olive oil, lemon, salt, and that's pretty much, and egg yolk. Mayo typically uses the entire egg, and they might use like a canola or probably the worst oil possible. Mustard is kind of a key ingredient with all of them. So the main thing, I don't really use recipes too much. And now I have salmonella. No, we're about to eat raw egg. I'm not worried about that. One of the main things with cooking, mayo, etc. is like you can mess up and then fix it. The main thing that you want to watch out for is it not splitting. But there's things you can do. You can add water, you can add other things. I'm just mixing these guys in. I'm gonna violate Gordon Ramsay. If you watch videos, Gordon Ramsay and a lot of people are like, oh, don't salt your eggs, it'll break down the yolk. These are farm fresh, they're a little bit thicker, and we're gonna be emulsifying this with something that's a lot less dense. So I do wanna break this up a little bit. I'm gonna add a little bit of salt. We'll salt it after it's all said and done. And a lot of times I will use either a Vitamix or a NutriBullet, works really well. And you don't have to worry as much about it breaking because it's spinning like 1,000 times per every few seconds. The only thing is you want to get your ratios right. With just making it by hand, it only takes a few minutes and then you can kind of control it because there's no real hard and fast rules. If you just look at a recipe and it's like, oh, 1 cup of oil to 2 egg yolks, you might mess up. And put this here just so it doesn't move. And this is gonna take a bit. We might speed up, but just gonna do it really slowly. It's gonna be real fun. At first, you wanna do it slow. If you're using a food processor or a blender, you don't really have to worry about it too much. If you're doing it by hand, you wanna do it slow. But it's kind of like scrambling eggs or anything. You can kind of get a sense of what's happening and then you can adjust. If you do it by hand, it's probably gonna take 5-ish minutes. It is funny because mayo isn't inherently more unhealthy than aioli. Aioli sounds fancy. And then people like think that it's just a fancy term for mayo, but they're just different ingredients. Same end result. You want something creamy and egg based with some sort of oil or fat, and it's delicious. This is probably like really annoying to hear bam, 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 bam at the same time. Okay, I'll wait. So typically when you're emulsifying something, it's getting thicker. When you use a food processor or a blender or something else, and you're using whole egg or even just egg yolks, you're putting air into it at the same time, which if you ever like made a meringue or anything else, that's probably gonna collapse. I mean, those little bubbles. So even though it seems thicker at first, it might not help you at the end. By hand, you're gonna get something thicker, a little bit more, thicker, more quicker. That rhymes, unintentional. You can see with this guy, it's getting nice and thick. And really there's no like firm rule as far as how much or how little. It's all up to preference. So this is pretty nice and thick. There's a little bit of apple cider vinegar. And we don't need too much. I might use like a tablespoon Normally I don't measure, but for the sake of if we're trying to replicate this, might add a little bit. Probably add a little bit more, but a little bit of sugar. Probably just a teaspoon or so of sugar, because I'm trying to make somewhat of the Japanese style. And then I'm gonna do another. I mean, salt is delicious. We're gonna be salting everything else, and we're making a BLT, so everything's gonna be salty. Another reason why this is so much darker is because we're using just the yolks and not anything else. And also this doesn't have as much oil as you could add, just because it's pretty good. And then also what's in Japanese mayo, which makes it taste good, is MSG, which is not scary. All right, fantastic. So I'm gonna let this sit in the fridge. It'll thicken up a little bit. And then we'll get the rest of the stuff. Next thing we want to do is the bacon. So preheat your oven to 400, which I did not do. So I'm gonna do that. There's a few ways to make bacon. Everyone knows how to make bacon. Cast iron I love doing. You probably noticed that it splashes horrifically. Oven is my favorite method. So you just want to line it with a little bit of foil. So for a BLT, I'm gonna make one BLT. So this is from the butcher. I just asked him to get slightly thicker slices. You can make your own bacon, or you can just get the butcher to chop a whole thing and you can slice it however you like, but this is a lot easier. Half a pound at my butcher. We're gonna do 4 slices. Costs about $4.99. So if you go to like Safeway or Kroger, you're probably gonna end up spending like $6 on really crappy bacon. So might as well go to a butcher if you have one. That's why I like going to a farmer's market or a butcher or like a local little deli, because they have better stuff. Normally it's cheaper. The farmer's market, like you can have $20 in your pocket and get more than a week's worth of produce really easily versus going to the grocery store. Even like right now, during these times, I'd rather go to the farmer's market outside than go to a grocery store or have somebody else go to a grocery store for me. So I'm just gonna do 4 big slices, throw this in the oven. Usually it takes about 15 minutes. Pull it out a little bit early because it's still gonna continue to cook a little bit and it's gonna crisp up. It might look a little floppy at first, but it continues to cook, and then as the oils kind of dissipate, it's gonna get crispier. So those guys are in the oven. Instead of lettuce, which I don't know if lettuce belongs on a BLT. I mean, by definition, it belongs on a BLT. So I sliced up a little bit of sweet onion that I got at the farmer's market. What I'm gonna do is once the bacon is about halfway done, throw the slices in there, because I don't wanna over caramelize them, because I want a little bit of crunch to kind of, I guess that's what lettuce is for, other than adding watery, tasteless. You don't need a salad I mean, you can have a salad on the side. I don't recommend adding kale or spinach or anything else. It's a BLT, it's gonna be slightly unhealthy, so why not put a little bit of nice sweet onion in it instead? I don't know, seems like a good idea. Okay, so we got the onions in there. Next thing is the tomatoes. So obviously there's a variety of tomatoes that you can use. Like the big beefy tomatoes that you often find like in In-N-Out hamburgers. They can be good in a hamburger. Normally they're kind of pithy, don't have a ton of flavor. So if you can get heirloom, fantastic. Otherwise, Roma, if you kind of slice them up, those are good. You could even do like cherry tomatoes. It's gonna be a lot finer, but if you can get good heirloom? If you could get good earlobes, then no, heirloom tomatoes, those are probably the best. I mean, you could use a knife that you would use to chop anything else. I recommend using a bread knife that's serrated, because that'll give you, you're not gonna press through it. If you have a really sharp knife and you like sharpen it weakly, by all means, use a really sharp knife. But if you have a bread knife, might as well do that. So as you can see, you can just immediately slice through as opposed to fighting it. And we want fairly thick slices. Again, I'd rather have like a really good tomato than lettuce and more tomato. And also, like, you eat with your eyes first. So if you can get a couple different colors, got one orange, one red. You can tell like an actually human-grown tomato, and it tastes amazing. Like just olive oil, a little bit of salt. It's fantastic. So I'm gonna use those. With these like leftover guys, I love tomatoes. When I was a little kid, I would just eat salt and tomatoes. So I keep like finishing salt, a little bit of that, a little olive oil, maybe a little pepper, a little pep. Man. It's probably really gross, but I mean, to watch. This is delicious though. My word. My goodness. Okay, so I'm gonna eat all that's why you only need like a couple pretty slices, and then the rest just completely devour grossly by yourself. That's about where I want the bacon to be. You really thought this through. So I'm gonna set aside the bacon. Throw that over here. Ow! Mother Teresa. Because the oil is obviously delicious and we want some of it, but we don't want all of it. And we're about to do something really, probably not the healthiest. So again, sourdough, fantastic. Let other people do it if you can, unless like you have a ton of time. I mean, this is really like a long way to make a BLT, so it would be hours if we just made it from scratch. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna soak up the bacon fat to both sides, because I mean, typically you would use butter, but we don't want to make it overkill. So soak up all that oil. Also gonna throw these onion slices on here. They still have a little bit of texture. They're not like dissolving instantly. Also, kids, don't use your hands because it's hot. So now we have like oniony, bacony goodness. A little tomato break. Just gonna add some pepper on it. Never have too much pepper. We're gonna throw this in the oven. It's still at around 400 degrees, so this will toast up. I want one side to be a little bit more crispy than the inside. So I'll put it at 400 for, I don't know, a couple minutes, then turn on the broiler and get the top part really crispy, and then we'll pull it out. All right, so while that's going, I pulled out our mayo. Because we're making a somewhat like Japanese inspired mayo, I'm gonna make this a spicy mayo. Add a good amount of sriracha. I do want a tiny amount of freshness in the BLT just to break up some of the stuff. It doesn't have to be a ton, so I'm just going to put a little bit, maybe like half a lemon worth of zest in here. Oh man. So now really all we have to do is assemble it and then eat it. So the edges are nice and toasty. And you want a good amount of, this is gonna be somewhat messy. Make sure you have plenty of the sauce. We throw the onions on here. Nice layer. Please don't add cheese to a BLT. I mean, you can if you want to, but it just seems a bit much. I mean, there's no real rhyme or reason to how you have to stack this. Depending on how your bacon is shaped. You just want to make sure you have everything in every bite. And then you always want to salt like your tomatoes and everything a little bit. These are so like sweet and flavorful that you don't really need to, but in general. Let's press it down a little bit, not too hard. Then make sure you use your bread knife. There you go. Oh my word. Oh man. Are you guys one of those maniacs that like picks up something and then flips it over and eats it, or do you eat it right side up? Maybe I'm the maniac. This seems harder the way that I do it. Oh my god. It's definitely super messy, but this is the best BLT. Actually, B.O.T, bacon, onion, tomato, B.O.T. This is the best B.O.T I have ever had. I can't. I've lost my ability to even. Totally worth it. I'm sorry, but that is the best. So I'm gonna go devour this immediately, but I will see you guys later.